Picture this. You're lying in bed at 2 a.m., phone glowing in your face, scrolling through perfect vacation photos and career announcements, and you're suddenly hit with this overwhelming question. Is this it? Is this really all there is? You've checked all the boxes society told you would make you happy. You've got the job, maybe the relationship, the carefully curated Instagram feed. But there's this ache inside that no amount of self-care Sundays or retail therapy can touch. A longing for something more real. Here's what terrifies me. We're living in the most connected, most entertained, most options-filled generation in human history. And we are also the most anxious, most medicated, most lonely. Think about that. We have everything our grandparents could have dreamed of, and yet we're Googling how to be happy at record rates. Imagine a woman at the grocery store, successful career, beautiful family, who stands frozen in the cereal aisle for 20 minutes because she can't decide between organic or regular. Overwhelmed, she turns around and says, I make million-dollar decisions at work, but I can't choose breakfast cereal without having a panic attack. That's not just overwhelm, that's a soul in crisis. Unfortunately, many of us are like this. When every choice feels like it carries the weight of the world, we've lost something essential. We've gained the whole world and lost our souls. And deep down, we know it. Hi, I'm your internet radio host, Lonis, and welcome to another episode of Lonis Night Fireside Reflections, a place where we pause, breathe, and remember what's true in a world that often feels like it's forgotten. Think of this as sitting by a warm fire with a good friend, having the kind of conversation that actually matters without staring at a screen. Not about the weather or what we watched on Netflix last night, but about the deeper questions that keep us up at night and the ancient truths that help us sleep peacefully. Today, we're diving into something that's been on my heart for months. Why faith still matters in a culture that seems to be losing its soul. And before you think, oh great, another preachy podcast, let me be clear. This isn't about perfection or having all the answers. This is about finding our way back to what anchors us when everything else feels like shifting sand. Whether you're someone who's been walking with faith for decades, or you're just starting to wonder if there's something more than the endless cycle of work, worry, and weekend plans, this conversation is for you. So grab your coffee, settle in, and let's explore together why faith isn't just relevant, it's essential. Signs of cultural drift. Let's start with the elephant in the room. We're living in an age where mental health issues are skyrocketing. Anxiety, depression, and suicide rates are at historic highs. The Surgeon General has declared loneliness a public health crisis. Think about that for a moment. We are so disconnected from each other that loneliness is literally killing us. But here is what's really striking. This is happening in the most connected, most prosperous, most entertained generation in human history. We have more options for everything, from what to eat for breakfast to what to binge watch tonight. Yet we are more paralyzed by decision fatigue than ever before. We have dating apps that give us access to thousands of potential partners, but marriage rates are plummeting and people are lonelier than ever. Let me paint you a picture of what I mean by cultural drift. Turn on the TV, and you'll see reality shows celebrating dysfunction, news channels that profit from keeping us angry and afraid, and advertisements that promise happiness through consumption. Our kids are growing up thinking that their worth is determined by likes and followers, and our teenagers are more anxious than previous generations' psychiatric patients. Remember when Sunday used to mean something? When stores were closed, families gathered, and there was this rhythm to life that included rest and reflection? I'm not saying we need to go back to the 1950s. There were plenty of problems then too. But we've lost something essential in our race to optimize every moment of our lives. We've created a culture where productivity is our god, where being busy is a badge of honor, and where the question, what do you do, has become more important than who are you? We've turned self-care into another thing to achieve and mindfulness into another app to download. And here's the thing that breaks my heart. We're raising a generation that knows more about managing their personal brand than managing their inner life. They can curate the perfect Instagram feed, but can't sit with silence for 5 minutes. They know how to build a LinkedIn network, but not how to build lasting relationships. This isn't about nostalgia or saying everything was better in the past. Every generation has its struggles, but there's something uniquely disorienting about our current moment. We've gained the whole world. Literally, it's in our pocket, but we're losing our souls. The ancient Greek philosophers had a word for this, akadia. It's often translated as spiritual laziness, but it's more than that. It's a kind of spiritual restlessness, a weariness of the soul that comes from being disconnected from what's eternal. It's what happens when we try to fill the God-shaped hole in our hearts with everything except God. You see it everywhere. People are desperately searching for meaning through career achievements, through perfect relationships, through the next vacation, through the next purchase. But it's like trying to fill a bucket with a hole in the bottom. No matter how much you pour in, it's never enough. Why faith still anchors us? So why does faith matter in this context? Because faith provides what our culture desperately needs, an anchor. I remember a moment about 6.5 years ago when I was having what I can only describe as a mini crisis. Everything felt unstable. My career was uncertain. My personal life was not exactly the greatest. And I was scrolling through social media at 2 a.m., comparing my behind the scenes to everyone else's highlight reel. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of options, obligations, and dissatisfaction. And I couldn't find solid ground anywhere. That's when I remembered something my grandmother used to say. When the storms come, you need to know what won't move. She was talking about faith, not as an escape from reality, but as the foundation that holds steady when everything else is shaking. Faith gives us what psychologists call meaning making, the ability to see our lives as part of a bigger story. When we believe that our lives have purpose beyond our immediate circumstances, we can endure difficulty with hope rather than despair. We can see setbacks as part of our growth rather than evidence of our failure. Look at the research. People with strong faith communities live longer, have better mental health, and report higher levels of life satisfaction. They're more resilient in the face of trauma, more generous with their resources, and more likely to have stable relationships. This isn't just correlation. There's something about faith that fundamentally changes how we navigate life. But it's not just about personal benefits. Faith gives us moral clarity in a world that's increasingly relativistic. When everything is subjective, when truth is whatever you want it to be, when right and wrong are just matters of personal preference, we lose our ability to make good choices. We lose our compass. Faith says there are some things that are true regardless of how we feel about them. There are some things that are right regardless of whether they're popular. There are some things that matter regardless of whether they're profitable. In a culture that's constantly shifting, faith provides fixed points of reference. And here's something beautiful. Faith connects us to something bigger than ourselves. In a culture of radical individualism, where we're constantly told to follow our hearts and live our truth, faith reminds us that we're part of a community, part of a story that began before we were born and will continue after we're gone. I think about the woman in the Bible who had been bleeding for 12 years. She had spent everything she had on doctors who couldn't help her. She was considered unclean, untouchable, isolated from her community. But when she heard Jesus was passing by, she pushed through the crowd, believing that if she could just touch the hem of his garment, she would be healed. That's faith. It's not denial of reality. She knew she was sick. It's not wishful thinking. She had tried everything else. It's the deep conviction that there's more to reality than what we can see, measure, or control. It's the belief that love is stronger than fear, that hope is stronger than despair, that there's a power in the universe that's for us, not against us. Faith gives us permission to be human. It says we don't have to be perfect. We don't have to have it all figured out. We don't have to be our own savior. In a culture that demands perfection and punishes vulnerability, faith offers grace, unearned, unlimited, unconditional love. And that changes everything. When you know you're loved not because of what you do, but because of who you are, you're free to take risks, to be authentic, to extend grace to others. You're free to fail without being a failure. You're free to be wounded without being broken. Faith isn't old-fashioned. It's timeless. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. This all sounds nice, but isn't faith just an outdated way of thinking? Isn't it time to move beyond these ancient superstitions and embrace a more modern scientific worldview? Here's what I find fascinating. The questions faith addresses: why are we here? How should we live? What happens when we die? How do we find meaning in suffering? These aren't old-fashioned questions. They're the most human questions there are. They're the questions that have driven art, philosophy, and science for millennia. They're the questions that keep us up at night in 2025. The tools we use to explore these questions have evolved. We have microscopes and telescopes and brain scans that our ancestors couldn't imagine. But the questions themselves remain the same because they're rooted in the human condition itself. Think about it this way. We wouldn't say that love is outdated because we now understand the neuroscience behind it. We wouldn't say that beauty is irrelevant because we can analyze the mathematical ratios that make a sunset pleasing to the eye. The deeper realities of human experience can't be reduced to their component parts. Scripture speaks of this beautifully. In Ecclesiastes, written thousands of years ago, we read, "There is nothing new under the sun." The writer is observing that while circumstances change, the fundamental human experience remains constant. We still struggle with pride, fear, loneliness, and the search for meaning. We still long for love, purpose, and connection. The message of faith isn't retreat from the modern world. It's remember what's always been true. It's don't lose the ancient wisdom in your pursuit of the latest trend. I think about how every few years we get a new wellness trend that promises to solve all our problems. Meditation, mindfulness, gratitude practices, digital detoxes. And these aren't all bad things. But notice how many of these revolutionary approaches are actually rooted in spiritual traditions that are thousands of years old. The tech world has discovered that meditation reduces stress and increases focus. Faith traditions have been saying this for millennia. Psychologists have found that gratitude practices improve mental health. The Psalms are full of gratitude practices. Researchers have documented the benefits of community and service. Jesus said the greatest commandments are to love God and love your neighbor. We keep discovering what faith has always taught because these truths are woven into the fabric of human experience. They're not cultural artifacts from a less enlightened time. They're insights into how we are designed to live. And here's something that never goes out of style: hope. No matter how advanced our technology becomes, no matter how much we understand about the universe, we still need hope. We still need to believe that our lives matter, that our suffering has meaning, that love is stronger than death. Faith provides unshakable hope because it's rooted in something eternal. Cultural movements come and go. Remember when everyone was sure that communism was the future? Or that the internet would solve our problems? Or that positive thinking alone could transform our lives? These movements rise and fall because they're built on temporary foundations. But faith endures because it's built on the character of God, unchanging, faithful, loving. It's built on promises that don't depend on circumstances, on love that doesn't depend on performance, on hope that doesn't depend on outcomes. Look at the great faith leaders throughout history. They didn't become irrelevant as society evolved. They became more relevant. Martin Luther King Jr., his faith didn't make him backward. It made him prophetic. Mother Teresa's faith didn't make her out of touch. It made her more compassionate than any secular humanitarian program could achieve. These weren't people who used faith as an escape from reality. They were people who used faith as a lens to see reality more clearly, to engage with the world more courageously, to love more deeply than seemed humanly possible. That's what faith does. It doesn't make us less human. It makes us more human. It doesn't disconnect us from the world. It connects us to what's most real about the world. It doesn't make us irrelevant. It makes us essential, because the world desperately needs people who remember what's eternal. So here's what I want you to think about as we wrap up today. Where do you place your hope? What do you run to when life gets overwhelming? What grounds you when everything feels uncertain? I'm not asking you to have perfect faith or to pretend you don't have doubts. I'm asking you to be honest about what you're trusting in right now. Is it your job, your relationships, your health, your bank account, your ability to control your circumstances? And here's the gentle follow-up question. How is that working for you? Are the things you're trusting in providing the stability, peace, and purpose you're looking for? Or are they leaving you feeling more anxious, more empty, more lost than before? There's no judgment here. We all put our hope in things that can't ultimately save us. But maybe it's time to consider that the restlessness you feel, the sense that something is missing, the longing for something more, maybe that's not a problem to be solved, but a compass pointing you toward what your soul actually needs. Maybe your heart is homesick for something you've never experienced but somehow know is real. Maybe the cultural drift we're experiencing isn't just random. Maybe it's what happens when we try to build our lives on foundations that weren't designed to hold the weight of human existence. And maybe faith isn't about believing impossible things despite the evidence. Maybe it's about recognizing that the deepest truths about reality, love, hope, purpose, and meaning can't be measured in a lab, but can be experienced in the depths of our souls. Take a moment this week. Sit in silence. Ask yourself, what would it look like to trust in something that can't be shaken? What would it feel like to belong to a story bigger than your own? What would change if you believed you were loved, not because of what you do, but because of who you are? Friends, I want to leave you with this truth. You're not alone in feeling like the world has lost its way. You're not alone in longing for something more stable, more real, more meaningful than what our culture is offering. That longing is not a weakness. It's a sign that you were made for something more. Faith isn't about having all the answers. It's about knowing the one who does. It's about finding rest in the middle of the storm. Not because the storm stops, but because you're anchored to something that can't be moved. Your story matters. Your struggles matter. Your questions matter. And you don't have to figure it all out on your own. There's a community of people who are walking this path with you. People who are learning to trust in something bigger than themselves. People who are finding that faith isn't the enemy of reason. It's the foundation of hope. Here's what I'd love from you. I want to hear your story. What's your experience with faith? What questions are you wrestling with? What has anchored you during the storms of your life? Send me a message. I read every single one, and your story might be exactly what someone needs to hear. And if this conversation has resonated with you, if you found even a small spark of hope or a moment of clarity, I want you to do two things. First, subscribe to Longest Night Fireside Reflections. This is more than just a podcast. It's a community of people who believe that in a world that's losing its soul, faith isn't just relevant, it's essential. Second, share this with someone who needs to hear it. We all know someone who's struggling, someone who's searching, someone who's trying to make sense of this beautiful broken world. Don't keep hope to yourself. Share it. Forward this episode. Start a conversation. Invite someone to join us by the fire. Because here's what I know. In a culture that's lost its way, the most radical thing you can do is remember what's always been true. In a world that's losing its soul, the most powerful thing you can do is hold on to faith. Not as an escape from reality, but as the foundation for engaging with reality courageously, hopefully, and with deep, abiding love. Thank you for joining me today. Until next time, remember, you are known, you are loved, and you're not alone. This is Longest Night Fireside Reflections, reminding you that in a world that's constantly changing, some things never change. And that's exactly what we need.